Reigns just made his epic return on Raw and the fans went absolutely crazy for him. When the Tribal Chief walked through that curtain, the place erupted. It was as loud as it gets, and fans even started singing his name. It was a generational moment, but here's the thing. That return exposes one of WWE's biggest problems. There's this growing belief pushed by WWE and echoed by fans online that wrestling attractions shouldn't appear weekly, that showing up too much will ruin their aura, that guys like Roman need to feel special, and I believe that's nonsense. It's the biggest myth that WWE ever sold, and somehow they got away with it. They've trained us to believe that less is more, when in reality, less is just less. Don't get me wrong, Roman's return was incredible. There's no doubt about that. But the fact that this is his 52nd return is a problem. And if WWE doesn't fix it now, the industry will not survive. It's time we start talking about it before it's too late. This idea that WWE's top stars should not appear frequently falls apart the moment that you look back at history. I went deep into the numbers and analyzed the biggest names from WWE's past. I'm talking about the legends who built this business, guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret the Hitman Hart, John Cena, The Rock, Triple H, and The Undertaker. The biggest attractions from the Golden Era, the Attitude Era, and the Ruthless Aggression Era. When looking at the data, you quickly learn that these weren't just top stars, they were workhorses. On average, they appeared on Raw or SmackDown 47.2 weeks a year. That means they were there 91% of the time. They showed up week in and week out without any excuses. The company clearly understood that these names were the entire show. Without them, you don't have WWE. And now, this is Roman Reigns. Since going part-time, Roman Reigns has averaged just 17.3 weeks of appearances per year. That's 30 weeks fewer than the generation before him. He's on weekly WWE television just 33% of the time. Let that sink in. This is the man that WWE invested a decade into. The man they handpicked to carry the company, and now, after everything, he only shows up to work a third of the time. This isn't just disappointing, it's dangerous. Because here's the bigger problem. This doesn't only apply to Roman Reigns. I ran the numbers on today's top stars, and what I found was alarming. Over the past 3 years, WWE's biggest attractions have averaged just 25.9 weeks of appearances annually. That's a 49% attendance rate. Compare that to the last generation, and we're looking at a 53% drop. And now the recent decline in WWE's momentum is starting to make sense. It's no longer a mystery, it's actually a consequence. Ratings are going down and ticket sales are slowly slipping, and the product feels colder than it did just a year ago. And you can feel it. Gunther's first world title reign was extremely criticized for how infrequently he wrestled. Randy Orton was healthy, but they wrote him off TV for nearly 5 months because they had nothing for him. Io Sky defended her championship once between WrestleMania and Evolution, and the face of the company takes 8 months off. The drop in WWE's product isn't just a creative slump, it's a fundamental change in how top stars operate in WWE, and I think it could lead to the end of the business. So that begs the question, why? Why are the biggest stars in wrestling today working less than ever before? I did some digging, and I think
it doesn't matter what you think!
There are 3 pieces to this puzzle, and the first one starts with The Rock. After his football dreams fell short, Dwayne Johnson turned to his roots and asked his father to train him for a career in professional wrestling. It didn't take too long before he debuted as Rocky Maivia. After a rough start, he reinvented himself and became The Rock, one of the most electrifying superstars in WWE history. He won multiple championships, gave us unforgettable promos, and played a central role in helping WWE defeat WCW during the Monday Night War. The Rock was truly a generational talent. But then, that is when Hollywood came in calling. It began with a supporting role as a Scorpion King in The Mummy Returns, and that is where things quietly started to change. The Rock tried to balance both worlds. He tried to remain as the people's champion while building an acting career, but it wasn't working. Just look at this graph. The Rock went from appearing 50 times a year to just 8. We saw less of The Rock and more of Dwayne Johnson. He was essentially becoming less of a wrestler and more of a movie star, and that simply wasn't sustainable, especially for someone who was still one of WWE's highest paid performers. That is when WWE made a decision they don't like to talk about. They quietly let him go. Officially, it was described as a clerical error. The WWE really told people this was a paperwork mistake that resulted in his contract expiring. Let's be real, you don't accidentally forget to re-sign the man who had been your face of your company for nearly a decade. The WWE wasn't even interested in bringing him back as a celebrity guest host during that time, despite The Rock publicly expressing interest. In fact, reports surfaced that WWE wanted his movie career to fail. They were bitter. They didn't like seeing one of their top stars turn their back on wrestling and shift his focus to Hollywood. But he didn't fail. He became the highest paid actor in the world and built a billion-dollar empire. Now look, that's amazing for Dwayne Johnson, but here's the problem. This was the start of a new trend. WWE superstars realized they could use their wrestling fame as a launching pad, turning themselves into crossover celebrities and chasing bigger opportunities outside of the WWE. That brings us to the second part of the story, the next domino to fall.
I quit!
After The Rock left WWE for Hollywood, the company was forced to pivot. They needed new stars, new icons who could lead the next generation into the ruthless aggression era. WWE made their picks. John Cena became the face of Raw, while Batista dominated SmackDown. And to their credit, it worked. Both men rose to the occasion. They would go on to win titles, headline WrestleMania, and carry WWE on their backs for a decade. But just when everything seemed so secure, things started to slowly fall apart. Batista saw how The Rock turned his wrestling fame into Hollywood superstardom, and he wanted a piece of that dream. He started exploring film opportunities while still competing in WWE, but the company had seen this movie before. Literally, they just watched The Rock try to juggle both until he vanished from the wrestling world entirely. They weren't about to let that happen again. So, the WWE shut it down. Batista's acting aspirations were met with resistance, and this actually led to his departure from the company. The WWE didn't think he'd go far. They figured that The Rock was a once-in-a-lifetime charisma machine, and that Batista, on the other hand, was nowhere near that level. But then it happened. Batista landed the role of a lifetime with Guardians of the Galaxy. The timing couldn't have been any better. He entered the Marvel Universe just before it exploded into one of the biggest film franchises in history. The movies were massive, and Batista became a global name. All of that happened while the WWE just lost yet another main event star in the middle of their prime. To make things even worse, their other superstar left just a few years later. In 2016, John Cena, who was only 38 years old at the time, quietly stepped away from full-time wrestling. He wasn't injured, he wasn't burnt out, he chose Hollywood, and just like The Rock and Batista before him, he succeeded. He landed roles in major movies, popped up on the biggest talk shows, and took his popularity to the next level. John Cena became a global crossover star, and once again, the WWE spent a decade building a franchise player only to watch him walk away. At this point, the WWE was trapped in a pattern. They kept building superstars only to lose them to Hollywood. It was a cycle, and it was costing them their biggest names during their peak years. That's when the company had to make a difficult decision, a decision that would change everything. This is the final piece of the puzzle, and his name is... With The Rock leaving and others following in his footsteps, the WWE lost the leverage they once thought they had. They could not control the narrative anymore. Wrestlers had seen the blueprint. It was quite simple. They could use WWE as a launching pad, then cash in with a bigger paycheck and a lighter schedule while doing Hollywood projects. And instead of continuing to fight this growing trend, the WWE slowly started to embrace it. Brock Lesnar's return was the first true example of WWE voluntarily welcoming back a wrestler in their prime under a new type of deal. The logic was simple. If you can't keep them full time, at least have him for some time of the year rather than none of it. In hindsight, it made sense why WWE signed him to a part-time deal. Maybe things could have been different had they not pushed The Rock out of wrestling. Maybe Batista could have walked into his Guardians of the Galaxy promotions with the WWE Championship around his waist. But now, the company had a second chance to do things differently. When Brock Lesnar's agent proposed a limited date schedule, the WWE saw it as an opportunity. You could call it a test. Could their biggest stars still feel special while wrestling only a handful of times per year? At first, fans hated it. The online community was loud and they were angry. The biggest problem was Brock Lesnar taking main event spots from guys who were grinding every week for 300 days a year. But then something shifted. Fans, for whatever reason, began to buy into this new idea. They accepted that these special attractions added value, that a Brock Lesnar match felt like a big deal because you didn't see him wrestle every Monday or Friday. This philosophy opened up the door for The Rock's return in 2013, which led to him winning the WWE Championship. It justified the decision to have Brock Lesnar end the Undertaker streak at WrestleMania, and it set the stage for part-timers to dominate the top of the card. Then Goldberg came back and squashed some of the brightest young stars in the company, and that is when the full impact of this era came into focus. The Rock's leap to Hollywood didn't just change his own life, it paved the way for a dark shift in WWE's philosophy. A shift towards spectacle over storytelling, moments over momentum, legends over loyalty, and profit over passion for wrestling. And today, WWE fans are now paying the price. The WWE fooled us into believing that part-timers, fewer matches, and limited schedules were best for business, but they're not. However, now that WWE has gotten away with it, they've doubled down, actually encouraging talent to chase Hollywood dreams, and some wrestlers love it. They make more money, they take fewer bumps, and they grow their fame beyond the ring. For example, Roman Reigns has been flirting with Hollywood for years. Cody Rhodes is about to star in the new Street Fighter movie. John Cena's retirement tour has not lived up to the hype, and The Rock comes and goes whenever he wants, rewriting history like he never left. Even the booking has changed. Matches are rare. Wrestling, yes, I mean actual wrestling in professional wrestling, is happening less than ever before, and it's hurting the product. The same people who dream about epic matches like this on a random episode of TV are the ones defending the idea that these stars don't need to show up on TV weekly. We are headed towards a very dark path. Wrestlers are not wrestling, they're negotiating for lighter schedules, they're positioning themselves for Hollywood exits, and we're left with the mid-card trying to carry the show. Raw and SmackDown cannot be neglected. The WWE must return to loading these shows up with box office stars who want to be there. Fans need to reject this idea that limited appearances make superstars feel special, because history proves the opposite. Every era was built on consistency. Top draws would make the most appearances. I understand that wrestlers want to explore Hollywood, but the WWE must find talent willing to make this their #1 commitment. It's time to get back to a place where the WWE is the main destination, not just the stepping stone to something else.